Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we're doing a really fun video. I love these types of videos because they let me just riff on my favorite archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! And the archetypes that I would go absolutely bananas for if they ever were to get support. This is my top 10 list on archetypes that if, let's say theoretically in the next 6 months, if these 10 archetypes got support and they were meaningful support that bumped them up to at least rogue level, you guys know how I roll. I don't even want my favorite decks to be top tier meta. I'd rather them be just solid rogue. Then I would be the happiest player in the entire community. So we're jumping into it. Keep in mind, this is my personal list. Everybody's going to have their own list. Please throw in the comment section down below your one archetype that you would throw in there. Like, what's the one archetype, if you could have them get meaningful support to make them at least a rogue deck or higher, like a solid rogue deck or higher in the next 6 months, what would it be that would make you extremely happy in this game? But let's get into it. That's enough. Starting off, Magnet Warriors. I want to start with them because they could be higher on my list, but you guys know I have harped on this all over the place over the last couple of years on the channel. If you've been paying attention, it is what it is. My biggest thing with them is they came out with the new Electromagnet Warrior cards at the same exact time as the ABC cards. The two structure decks at the exact same time, one for Kaiba, one for Yugi. ABCs were immediately like meta relevant, and Electromagnet Warriors didn't even sniff a fart of competitive play. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. I think it's a crime against nature. Like, Yugi's archetype got left in the dust by Kaiba. That makes no sense to me. I think they still have some really good pieces. I think if you go out and you read the Electromagnet Warriors, Alpha, Delta, and Gamma, you'd be like, those are some good cards. They have some other cards here and there. They've gotten random one-off cards here and there. I really don't think they're that far away. They need their own ABC Dragon Buster type boss monster. That's one thing they definitely need, is a definite like win condition payoff. But I still think this archetype definitely deserves it, and it should get it. Number 9, Agents. This one just barely beat out something like Burning Abyss to me. I thought Burning Abyss was cool, but just didn't make it for me. And I know this one's not the most realistic because they got a full structure deck with 8 new cards, like, whatever, 2-ish years ago. And there's some good cards in there. To me, though, the extract now is solid between, the Link 2, the Parshath Link 3, the Synchro 5, and the Synchro 10. The deck has some pretty good Synchro accessibility, extra deck accessibility in general. The problem is the main deck engine is just still not that good to me. I still just feel underwhelmed by the extra deck, or the main deck. I mean, I would like to see 1 or 2 new cards in the main deck that just help them extend and like get to what they want to get to, or at least play through interaction a little bit better. Venus and Shine Ball is just not that reliable, so I'd like to see something there. I just thought this is historically one of the like really cool archetypes a lot of people love. A lot of people, when they look back on like the history of Yu-Gi-Oh, they're fond of, because when the first structure deck came out, it actually was pretty good. Hyperion was a legit meta warping boss monster at the time, and he's still a playable card in 2024, which is crazy, but they definitely need something. And I'd like to see it, just because even after their structure, it's not like they were awesome and then like power crept and they fell off. They never even got there. So I'd like 1 or 2 more cards, or at least get them there. Give them a little phase of like playability. I'd love to see that. I'm a big fan of this archetype. I like fairy archetypes. They're just cool. And this one being based off of like planets and mythology is really cool. So I like it a lot. So number 9, Agents. Number 8, Paleozoic. This one's kind of spicy to me. And this one I think is so interesting because I think one card could do it. It'd have to be a very specific one card, but one card I think could do it. I don't even think they need to worry about power creeping some of the bad Paleos. I mean, I think Olenoides, Dynamiscus, Canadia, even Morella, those 4 are solid. I don't even think you need that much outside of those. As far as the traps go. But like, we saw they released a Link monster a couple years ago, 1 or 2 years ago. It wasn't enough, and it required Paleozoic specifically, and you were like, this is so slow, it's insane. Let's say, for example, we got a new Link 2 that took, whether it's 2 Aquas, 2 level 2 water monsters, something to at least somewhat pigeonhole it to like the general idea. Maybe it's 2 water monsters and just kind of locks it to water archetypes in general, but maybe it gives you the ability to like on summon set a Paleozoic card from your deck. And so you have to play a somewhat brick of like a trap card, and a lot of modern decks don't want to play trap cards, but for that easy of a payoff, that's pretty freaking spicy. And I think about, if especially if it was like taking 2 water monsters, I think about something like Marine Cess, an archetype that like the big weakness for them is like power. When they resolve their combo, they don't end on that much, right? It'll be like the imperm kind of effect and maybe a spell or trap negate. And if they really popped off, and maybe a totally awesome on top of that, but also being able to add a Dino Miskets to that could really propel what they want to do and really raise the ceiling of what they like to do, as well as some other water decks. So I think something like that could be really cool. Depends on exactly the specifics of where they went with a link like that. They don't want to make it too generic so that any deck can just splash 1 Dynamiscus and, you know what I mean, 1 card in the extra deck. But I think something cool could be done with that to make Paleozoics a little more interesting in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! But we'll see. We'll see with that. Next up, Beat Trooper. This is number 7, right? 10, 9, 8, 7. I've talked about Beat Troopers as well, kind of almost to the same extent as Magnet Warriors. Not quite, though. My main gist with this deck is it doesn't have a mid-range play. Never has. This deck either like resolves everything and ends up with like an actual good bit of interruptions, but some of the interruptions are weird and don't always affect every single matchup type of thing. So it's hard to like pick and choose what you really want. But if all else fails, if you get hand trapped once or twice, you probably just pass. And what I really want is for this deck to get their own hieratic seal of Heavenly Spheres. I want a Link 2 that takes any 2 insects and gives them a decent interruption as well as follow-up. That's what I want more than anything. And if they could get something like that, I think that would put them in a much, much better position than they are in now. In fact, I think they would legit move to rogue deck status, like legit rogue deck status, like because they really do have some really awesome positives to the archetype. They just don't have the baseline. Like, to be that good of a deck, you have to have at least the bare minimum being like consistent enough, able to like play through hand traps enough, yada yada yada. The deck's just not quite there unless they get some sort of mid-range play where like you get hand trap once, twice, stick 2 insects, and boom, hand trap plus follow-up. That's what Dragon Link hangs their hat on, right? Get hand trapped once, twice, 3 times. Stick 2 dragons, make hieratic seal, and you can win a grind game that way. That's what I want to see here, because I do think they have some really, really awesome tools at their disposal aside from that. Number 6, Magistus. I like this archetype a lot. This is in my prediction list for this year, in getting support at some point. I think it makes a ton of sense. It's now like going to be the basis of like the new lore stories that Sky Striker owned for the last 2 years, and Sky Striker got like 10 support cards in those 2-year span. So I really think the door is open for Magistus to get a bunch of new support cards. I just think if you really went in and analyzed it, you would realize, like a lot of people would realize, that that's like a spellcaster mishmash, whatever, spellcaster pile deck has been like this close for a long time, years and years. And we just haven't gotten the connecting pieces to pull them all together. Maybe it takes a generic Link 2 that takes 2 spellcasters. Maybe it takes a bigger wave that really tries to pull things together specifically instead of something super generic. Whatever it is, I do think it could come with Magistus support, and I hope it does, because Magistus has been overall let down competitively. Invoked has been a letdown over the last 3 years competitively, hasn't been able to keep up. Dogmatic has largely fallen off the map, and Spellbook, has gotten some cards off the ban list. That's how bad it's been. Is like, Konami was like, take all your cards back. Who cares? You're not good anyway. Like, something to make like a spellcaster pile deck would be really cool. Doesn't need to be broken, but like cool enough to where it's playable. That could be really, really cool to see. So I'm hoping for it. I think it'd be really cool. I think this is the best one because this has lore ties to like Spellbook, Invoked, and Spellbook, Invoked, Endymion, and Witchcrafter specifically. But if it's just generic spellcaster stuff, it could tie into the other ones as well. So that would be really cool. I think it could support multiple archetypes at once. I think it's a really cool one. I really hope it ends up getting in there. Number 5, Magical Muskets. You could make an argument here that I could already check this off my list. I actually had this on my list for 10 archetypes that would get support this year as well. We got the Fiendsmith archetype, which helps this archetype immensely. It does a huge job at it, at that. But I think you can make the argument they didn't get actual support. They got support that helps Light Fiends, and they just happen to be one of the few exclusive Light Fiend archetypes So they do get inadvertent support, but it's not direct support, so I don't know whether to count it or not. My thing is, Konami tends to be pretty good at this thing and pretty slick on it. When they do something like this and you're like, okay, the Fiendsmiths help, but they're not all the way there, is it possible Konami gives 1 or 2 new cards for Magical Musketeers as well, throws it in Infinite Forbidden, and boom, they have, they're kind of doubling up on support like that? I think that's totally possible, and in fact, I hope it's true. If it's not there, I don't have that much hope that it's going to be there for the rest of the year, but the one thing about Magical Musketeers that does kind of irk me, even though the Fiendsmith stuff does help immensely with consistency and certain things and durability, but the one concern I have with Magical Musketeers is they're so restricted to their own archetype, right? Like, all of the musket cards the spells and traps cannot be activated unless you control a Magical Musketeer, not a Light Fiend. So the Fiendsmiths can't generically plop Light Fiends on for you. It has to get you a Musketeer to make those cards live. Otherwise, they're completely dead. And so you really want more straight up musket cards to plop in the deck to actually make sure that it really works through and through. So that's what I'd hope for. 1 or 2 cards, if they're solid. It feels weird that this archetype came out in the same deck mode pack as Weather Painters. Weather Painters last year got a really awesome field spell that helps their engine so much. And this archetype hasn't really gotten much in a while, aside from Max, but that was like 4 years ago now. I think it's time for this archetype to get 1 or 2 new cards to really help it climb back into at least rogue status. So I'd love to see it. Top 4, Cyber Dragon. This is my one probably huge, like, oh, what a, anime basic. This is such a basic pick. I like Cyber Dragons a lot. I love how inherently their deck has going second tools, but you don't even have to play them going second. You can play a going first deck that just has built-in good going second tools that can allow you to just win games going second just cuz. And I think that's such a powerful tool. The problem is Konami's kind of dropped the ball. I mean, I believe that this is the 4th most popular archetype in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Maybe numbers would prove that wrong, but I don't even think if it was wrong, it'd be that far off. At worst, it's like top 10. But I think after like Dark Magician, Blue Eyes, Hero, I'm not sure there's another archetype I feel comfortable saying is for sure more popular than this one. I think it might be the 4th most popular archetype in the game. It hasn't gotten a single Cyber Dragon card in 5 straight years. Look at it. There's like random cards, sure. There's Clockwork Knight and there's Theory and Regulus. There's some random cards here and there that like work with the deck, but not actual Cyber. Excuse me, not actual Cyber Dragon cards. I really want to see that. I would love for Konami to actually go in on that. I don't even think they need that much. They have good tools. They have the good normal summon. They have some extenders. They have consistency with core and emergency already kind of built in. I think they need a really good extender. I think the biggest thing that probably irks me about there's 2 big things that irk me about the archetype. The first one is the engine itself. The Cyber Dragon cards don't make infinity like consistently. You have to like hard draw machine duplication or find your way into a Galaxy Soldier to make infinity. And this is supposed to be like the boss monster of the archetype. And the archetype itself can't make it consistently. You have to draw out of archetype cards. I hate that. Give me some searchable in-engine cards that can get me into Cyber Dragon Infinity quickly and efficiently. I love that. The second thing, this is a fusion-based archetype. This came out in GX, the fusion era. And every single playable fusion monster, not even just playable, but every single fusion monster basically for Cyber Dragons, period, are all going second cards. Like, not a single one is like solid going first. So I'd love to see something where like they push the fusion mechanic, make you want to fusion more often, but you actually got to give them like a good going first monster to summon off of that stuff. So those are the 2 big things I would want them to address. Some other stuff here and there if they want just improve the engine in general, and I would be happy. But yeah, Cyber Dragon for sure is on the list for me. Top 3. Number 3, Ninjas. I know Ninjas aren't that likely. They got support at the beginning of 2023. I like that support quite a bit, but it just came up a little bit short. I think my one hope here for this year, realistically, is maybe Animation Chronicle. I've talked about this multiple times on the channel. There are a handful. Legit. It feels like every single generation of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the anime, there is a random-ass character that comes in, boom, he's playing ninja cards. And how many of those have actually been printed? Not that many. There's plenty that have not been printed yet. And Konami could definitely come through and be like, you know what, let's print some of those anime ninja cards in like Animation Chronicle. Long story short, I like the deck. I love flip-based decks, and this one and Subter are really the only real flip decks, like full flip decks. I think something like Shadal's is like a fusion deck first and a flip deck secondary. So like that one's kind of fringe for me. But like I think that's so cool that like two separate flip decks have been considered at least solid rogue options or better in modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! At one point in time. And if this deck, and that was only because it was heavy Kashtira format, so it had a decent Kashtira matchup. If they actually went and gave this archetype like one more push for the engine to actually make it so their ceiling's a little bit higher, and also a consistency is a worry for me as well. If you don't draw Hanzo, the deck is just okay. So like maybe something where we can more consistently either see Hanzo or see other cards to get us like decent payoffs. I think that could be more than just a super format dependent matchup based archetype. It could be like a legit rogue archetype that can play for years. So I love it. And it's ninjas. Like, why wouldn't Kami want to put ninjas out there? Everybody think ninjas are cool. Make more ninjas. Let's do it. Top two. Number 2 is Zephyr. You guys know how I feel about Zephyr. I played them for a little bit a couple of years ago. Actually pretty good success, but then the format caught up pretty quick. Long story short, this is like maybe the only existing control-based pendulum archetype left, and some people still don't even play it like that. They play it as an assisting engine that helps you end on a bunch of extra interruptions in a pendulum deck. But as a pure variant, it is a pretty control-oriented deck. The problem is the payoff's not good enough. You know, there is no 1-card combo. So a deck that has to start with a baseline of 2-card combo, and even the 2-card combo only gets you like 1 interruption, but you need to get like 3 cards to get multiple interruptions, and then it can get pretty powerful. That's just not good enough for modern day Yu-Gi-Oh! So they need to push that engine a little bit. The things I love about the archetype, it has a ton of consistency already. It has a ton of good interruptive cards. They just need an engine push. Something in the middle of what the deck already does that just you can get to as easy as you already get to everything else. That just says, you know what? 1 card is 1 interruption. The second card that used to be 1 interruption now is like 2 interruptions and a follow-up kind of thing, and just make the engine a little better. And I think that could really perform, because I do think inherently a control-based pendulum deck is quite strong, and that's what this deck was a couple of years ago when I played it. Because even if I didn't even like stop my opponent entirely, or like I went first and I set up a couple things and my opponent broke through, if they didn't break through the interruptions and clear my scales, if they left the scales there, I was pen summoning Zephyr again, searching another card, and just like kind of playing into their face. Like it just felt you had to follow up every turn no matter what, and it was really strong. And it's hard to beat. Something like Zephyr Path is still playable. If they make pure support really solid, then like Zephyr Path is still playable in the deck, and then that's like a huge floodgate. That card decimates decks as a going first play. But I think it has some cool tools. I just want to see it get 1 or 2 cards that just really help it push the engine a little bit further and just make it that much more powerful that it needs to be to compete. And I think it could be in a good position again a couple of years later. Number 1, Subter. I love this deck. This is the first deck I ever took to a regional. I went 6-3 with it. I beat every single deck that wasn't Sky Striker, and then went 0-3 against Sky Striker with it. Like unwinnable matchup, by the way. So I feel like I did pretty well overall at that tournament, but that regional, but it is what it is. I like this deck a lot. I know a lot of people hate this deck, and a lot of people give me flack on this, and they say, "What? Why would anyone want Subter to get support?" My whole point is the reason why Subter is so hated is because the support that Konami gave them basically turned them into a super heavy control stunning based strategy, where because the engine wasn't good enough, you had to rely and fall back on that there can be only ones, the goes in matches, the summon limits. Now, luckily, some of those have already been put to 1. A lot of people are already theorizing and hoping that something like summon limit gets put to 1. And if it does, those things aren't as big a worry. I think if the Konami actually went and gave this deck a legit good like 4 or 5 card wave that legit turned all your plays a little bit stronger, made the deck a little bit more pure, and just expanded the engine, made it worth it to actually play more engine and try to push further, then a lot of people would cut like the Red Eyes package, because you can't play the Red Eyes package if you plan on summoning anything. And so you'd cut that. You'd cut a lot of the floodgates, because 1, they're all already at 1. Maybe you'd play 1 Tikaboo, 1 goes, and fine, whatever. That's not degenerate by any means, in my opinion. And I think it would be a much more fun mid-range flip-based strategy closer to what ninjas have been. But I think it has even more potential than ninjas do. So I really like it. We already know they have some good cards between Hidden City, Guru, Fiendus, Final Battle at the very least. That's a very good 4-card core to build off of. And there's even a handful of cards that like aren't amazing, but like they're sitting there waiting for a new support card to come out and make them significantly better. And then they could immediately jump into like being playable again for the deck. Umastrix, Nemesis Warrior. Even the Link is surprisingly interesting, but they would need the type of support that helps you make the Link really easily to facilitate it. But I do think it is not the worst card in the world. We just don't have the tools to abuse it right now. So this deck just has a special place in my heart. First deck I ever took to a regional, I got 33rd place, going 6-3 in top cut. Technically, I would have got my invite if I had made top 32. So it hurt me, but it did make me feel good that like I basically every matchup that was winnable, I won. And every Sky Striker I played, I lost. Very special place to me. I love this archetype. I want Konami to do it justice. A lot of people still really like it. I know that for a fact. Every time I post about it, yes, some people hate it, but there is still quite a large community that still says, make Subterra good again, and in the right way, where we're not relying on Red Eyes Fusion. We're not relying on Floodgates. That would be amazing. So there you go. That's my top 10 list. I would be the happiest Yu-Gi-Oh player on the planet if Konami somehow, out of nowhere, supported all 10 of these with like the next 2 core sets, with Animation Chronicle, whatever it was, and somehow all 10 of these archetypes became rogue or better and just got nice, nifty support. I would be the happiest player on the planet. And even if only like 3 of these got that, I would still probably be the happiest player on the planet. Beggars can't be choosers, but I love these archetypes. I really think they deserve it. I hope they get it. Let me know in the comment section down below what your one archetype that would make you the happiest player, you know, that could be. If your one archetype got at least solid rogue level support or better, let me know what it is and what you'd want to get for them. And I'm out of here for today. I love you guys. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.